All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
Pokey Bones Rock Rage Radio.
As promised, I am joined by a very special guest, Andrew Hagar, and you will probably recognize the name. And yes, his dad is kind of famous. Andrew is kicking ass and trying to put his notch in the belt. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you being here. I did see the Paramount Plus Family Legacy.
Well, hell yeah.
Yes, I saw that. That was really cool. It was kind of cool to see you and your dad interacting.
It was like about an hour interview with him there, and then I did about another 6 or 7 hours after he left. So I had really no idea what kind of package they were going to put together for the show. And I think it turned out well. I mean, it was really lighthearted. We talked about a lot of serious stuff in that interview. They didn't really pull any of that stuff in there. So it was good to see the way that it turned out. And obviously, I'm really happy to be, involved with MTV and Paramount, like just for the extra visibility on the music. I really appreciate that. So
6 or 7 hours, dude? Really?
Yeah, swear to God, they asked me all kinds of questions about basically my entire life story, a lot of stuff from music. And I mean, I've had like a really kind of crazy life. So they got into a lot of things. It was like almost kind of a bummer that they didn't get to share any of that on the show. I always try to use any opportunity I get to talk about stuff, to talk about, mental health awareness. A massive advocate for any kind of reform when it comes to mental health. So we talked a lot about that and how it affects musicians, how it affects children of celebrities, which is not really something a lot of people talk about. And especially right now, there's a lot of bad-mouthing the whole Nepo baby thing. So I just want to clear the air on that. And, like I said, I think they did a really good job with the show, but I was simultaneously a little disappointed that they didn't air any of the, the more important stuff that we talked about.
Well, if you could have picked one thing that they did not air that you talked about, what would it be?
Honestly, I wish they would have showed the discussion that we had about Trev Lukather and I's relationship, not just our friendship, but our working relationship with the music, how we were trying to kind of spotlight mental health with the record that we made together, all that stuff. They cut out everything that I said regarding Trev, regarding our record, all of that stuff, and made it sound like I did Redlight Appetite on my own or something, which I couldn't have done that without Trev. So that was something I definitely wish they would have showed.
I would say that it might have possibly been a situation of time constraints.
Absolutely.
And I could see with them not, because they weren't really focusing so much on the music.
No.
They're focusing on that family legacy thing, which, it does have this whole interest, we'll say, because the way that I put it in my ad for the show this week is that I grew up on Van Halen.
Right.
You grew up with Van Halen.
It's a little different, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it does tweak people's curiosity, we'll say, and that was more what they were looking to feed into. I've not watched any other episode that they did. I did watch that one episode, mainly preparing for this interview. I also did want to see what Chester's son had to say. My heart goes out to that young man so hard.
Absolutely. He's such a sweet kid too. I mean, it was hard not to feel all of the empathy in the world for kind of what he had to experience. And obviously Linkin Park being one of these huge, massive summer rock bands. I grew up, with Linkin Park. That was more my generation. And I remember I was, devastated when I heard the news about Chester and coming off the heels of Chris Cornell and everything, another major hero from my childhood. Yeah, I was really happy with the way that they portrayed Draven though, because he's a really, really awesome kid, really talented. And he just came off as the sweetest guy.
Yes, and he's got all of his aspirations and things, and that's awesome. You have to have your own aspirations, and that's you've had a lot. You've got into MMA.
Yeah, my life, my job for a long time, for over a decade.
What took you away from that? Injuries, probably?
I have a lot of sports-related injuries coming into the sport, and then when I started training seriously when I was about 18, there weren't a lot of options at the time. The sport was still very, very young. There weren't a lot of the lower weight classes that you see now, bantamweight, flyweight. when I competed at like 145, and I should have been fighting at 135. And then later on, I started competing at 135, 138. And I don't know, I mean, all the guys I was training with were like, you know, heavyweights, light heavyweights, middleweights. And I'm not a big person. So, you know, you get banged up. And, you know, I had a long-term knee injury, several, you know, just all kinds of stuff. But the thing that really, when I started, you know, touring and playing shows, my dad was talking to me, and he was, you know, he's got a lot of experience with fight sports because his dad was a professional boxer, and he dabbled a little bit. And he told me at one point I was going to have to make a decision whether I wanted to continue my career as a trainer or continue my career as a performer and as a musician. And I was thinking, whatever, old man, like, you know, I can do both, like, whatever. And I shit you not, just a couple days later, I was training one of my amateur boxers. I was holding pads for him, and I called for a right uppercut. He threw it right straight, and he broke the middle finger on my right hand, which meant that I was going to have a really difficult time finger picking. If he would have done that to my left hand, I was just getting ready to go out my first tour, opening up for Willie Nelson and Chris Christopherson. And if that would have happened, I would have had a very difficult time playing guitar on that tour. So that was kind of the moment that made me go, oh, all right, yeah, he's correct about this. I got to choose one or the other. And after that, I just started working with a very small handful of private clients when I was back in town and not touring, and started to transition into doing music pretty much full time.
I could see the concern there. I really can. I mean, they have all of these clauses and contracts with athletes. You know, you can't be out doing stupid shit that's going to get you hurt and cause you not to get to play next year. And that's kind of like, yeah, you were doing the athlete side, and you were going to, you were going to fuck up your hand, dude. Yeah. Now, did you always have an interest in music? Something that just kind of came on later?
In college, when I started trying to like learn how to play guitar and write songs a little more seriously, you know, it's always been a part of me. I never thought that it's something that I would have done professionally, because my dad always pushed me really far away from music. He told me essentially he didn't care what I did growing up, that I could be a garbage man as long as I was happy, but that I should never under any circumstances try to do music because the industry was so, you know, awful. But you got to understand too, this was around the time, you know, he got kicked out of Van Halen and was trying to essentially like restart his solo career in the wake of all of that mess. And I can understand how someone would have apprehension about their kids going into the industry when like the industry is essentially blackballing them, you know?
Yeah.
So I can see where he was coming from with that. But as I've said before, like the first time I ever played like a real show, like I was playing, you know, whatever, house parties and basements, like with a little punk band that I had and stuff. And I played some open mic nights, but I had never done anything really substantial. And I got invited to, you know, open a small show for Chris Christopherson. And it was one of the most intense experiences I've ever had in terms of just feeling like pure joy. Like I think we were on there for like 15 minutes as an opening act. And like when the 15 minutes was over, I was just like, man, that just passed by in a blink. And it felt like something that I could do for the rest of my life. I just fell in love with it immediately. And contrast that with like my first amateur fight where I was just like terrified the entire time and couldn't wait for it to be over. And my coach, Rico Ciparelli, was like, hey, did you like it? And I'm like, yeah, I liked it. And in my head and heart, I was like, God, that was so fucking scary. I don't want to do that ever again. And I did end up doing it again, obviously. But Rico's like, hey, man, you got to be honest with yourself. Like, if you like it, you should do it. He's like, but only the crazy people like it. He's like, most people don't like this. And there's no harm in not liking it. You just got to figure that out early. So I stuck around for a while when I probably should have just said, you know what, I'm okay. I'm just gonna coach, or I'm just gonna train for fun. But I really wanted it, you know. And the same way that I really want music, like I've just poured every ounce of myself into getting better and practicing diligently, rigorously, writing songs. Like I take music the same way that I used to take training for a fight or training someone else for a fight. It's like you have to, you know, eat, sleep, breathe it. Like everything in your day has to be about it, because that's the only way that I'm ever gonna catch up with someone that's been doing this stuff for a lot longer than me. Like you gotta just pour your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, it's definitely a fight. It's a fight. There's so many competitors out there. It's insane.
You know, it doesn't feel like worthy. Like obviously I've gotten some opportunities that maybe I wasn't ready for, or maybe I shouldn't have gotten just based on my name. And in order to just even feel like I deserve those things, I feel like I have to work a lot harder than most people. And yeah, so that's just kind of where I've been, like, mentally and emotionally since I started doing this. I'm like, I can't ever stop doing it. You know, I played a lot of like open mic nights and just a lot of things that people don't see. I mean, it's like, whatever, they talk about like 10 years to become an overnight success. You know, it's like, same thing with fighting. Like, you watch people compete. Like, if you watched a UFC fight, for instance, you see two people in peak physical condition after they've been training for 4 to 6 week camp, sometimes 8-week camp. And you don't see all of the bumps and bruises, bad stuff that happens to them. You don't see the weight cut. You don't see all the stuff. You just see them performing at the highest level. And a lot of people have a misconception that it's like easier than it might be because they don't have to see all the work that goes into it. But it's the same way with, you know, playing a show. Even seeing someone have a bad night up there, you don't see all the stuff that may have happened that day. You don't see the technical difficulties. You don't see the days without sleep that they had getting there. Like, there's so many things that people just don't understand about the moment itself.
Well, I mean, and that's like you were talking about, you know, people's ideas and thoughts on the whole Nepo thing. And the name Hagar will take you so far, but it's only so far, and it's not real far.
Exactly.
And like you said, you know, you have to put your own work in.
Yeah, exactly. There's a saying in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, even a black belt, the belt only covers an inch of your ass, and it's up to you to cover the rest. So, same thing, man.
That's cool. Tell me about this new song, Redlight Appetite.
Redlight Appetite is, I think, like more about addiction and obsession and kind of like leaning into unhealthy vices. Like, and I'm writing it from the perspective of someone who, you know, struggled with like sex addiction for a while, that had some, you know, not so savory moments in their life. And I never want to like tell people exactly what a song is about, because it's up to you to listen to it and resonate with it however you want to and interpret it however you want to. But like when I wrote it, that's kind of the place where I was coming from. But the song is definitely about the kind of fine line between love and addiction and obsession, and kind of where those things meet and cross over. You know, like Red Light Appetite is kind of just showing the struggle, I would say, more than offering any kind of like resolution to it. But I think that that's important too. I mean, a lot of people feel as though they're the only people experiencing things. I know when I've been really depressed at moments in my life, I felt like there was nobody else going through what I was going through. And the bottom line is, like, for every feeling you felt, like millions of others felt the same way. And they probably all feel alone too. So just knowing that there's other people out there dealing with the same exact thing you're dealing with is comforting in a way.
What was it that got you so focused on mental health?
Really, I mean, my whole life I've struggled with, I don't know, I mean, with identity, with being able to like actualize my own life. Like, that's one of the reasons that I would count myself as being very lucky in this world of like second generation kids, is that I never tried to follow in my dad's footsteps until I had already actualized my life and my goals and my identity. You know, like most people, I mean, whatever, I grew up before, you know, social media, largely. Like, the iPhone didn't come out until I graduated college. So I didn't grow up with Instagram, with TikTok, with Snapchat. I didn't grow up with all these things that are constantly making you compare yourself to other people. So I was able to kind of develop myself as a human being and my self-confidence and all these things outside of that world. And I feel very lucky that by the time I ended up trying to pursue music, I had already fully formed my own identity. Because I see so many people that are second gens that struggle with that. They're living like in the shadow. They feel constantly like they need to prove themselves. They're insecure, like all this stuff. I never felt that way in music, because so much of my identity had already been built outside of you know, the scope of my family and my father. But that's something I feel like is really important in terms of overall mental health, especially for musicians. Like, a lot of musicians struggle, and a lot of artists struggle with their mental health, and that's how they express themselves through their art, right? Like, a lot of art comes from suffering.
What do you have coming up?
Yeah, we got some dates over the summer that I'm going to announce soon, just a smattering of dates here and there. And we're working on a more substantial tour in the fall. talk to some booking agents and stuff. My band and I have been doing, you know, kind of 1 or 2 off little shows or mini runs with like 3 shows here and there. And I love my band. They're all super experienced, really great guys, super talented, and we've really started to gel. So I think the live show is something people will appreciate. It's really fun music. It's fun live. I got a new single coming out next Friday, May 5th. It's called Systematic Minds, and it's the very first song that Trev and I wrote together back in December of 2020. It's probably my favorite song off the record, so I'm really excited to get that one out. I hope people enjoy it as much as I do.
I'll start spinning it too. I'll put that in Redlight. I'll do like a twofer type thing. So
Thank you so much, Chris.
there we go. Where can everybody find your music at and everything to do with Andrew Hagar?
I mean, you can find all of my music on any streaming service. Just look for Andrew Hagar and you'll find it. You can check me out on Instagram, Andrew Hagar Official. That's where I'm the most active. I have a TikTok, same thing, Andrew Hagar Official, but I don't really post on there as much as I probably should, as much as all the labels and stuff would want me to. I'm also, you know, on Facebook, and that's usually just reposts from my Instagram. So, yeah, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing, man. I really do.
Absolutely.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
Pokey Bones Rock Rage Radio.